Good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. It's another fine day once more. Fuck off software updates, I ain't doing them. Because software updates suck butt. And, I hope all of y'all are doing okay. It's going to be a nice, relaxing time once more. Just like always, we're going to be doing the same thing as we always do, which is listening to some nice stories from Zombie. I have good news. Lots of good news, to be honest. Oh, hell yeah, I got some VSC content drop, apparently. Hold up. Bink! I got good news, good news, good news, good news. Lots of good news, actually. And some sad news. Hello. How's it going? Let me quickly go around here and just fucking dink. That'll do. We'll have that going. I'm gonna sit here for a bit. And, I'll yap a tiny bit. Because, so... One of my friends, had a dog that was going through a lot of things. They were basically on the verge of, you know, they were old, they were going to pass out. And, rather not pass out, pass away. And today we received the confirmation that their dog has been euthanized. Thoughts and prayers towards this friend and their dog, and I feel very bad for them, because obviously that dog was one of their best friends for so many years. And it's unfortunate when things like that happen. That's better. And I hope that they can recover eventually from this, because it's not fun when your best friend is basically gone. I'm a little bit teary-eyed about that, because that dog meant a lot to them. What is this? Huh? Alright. What do we get? Classism Stick, Potty Popper, and the Warp effect. Huh. What the fish? Hold up, let me put this on the wheel. Now I'm actually interested. What the heck was that? Oh gosh. Ooh. Alright, we'll equip that. That's funny. Alright, yeah. But yeah, in other news, the travel agency is going to be coming back next week. That's going to be amazing. Yes, I'm have to mimicking everything. I'm still on desktop. That hasn't changed. There might be some changes to that eventually, but right now, it seems that we are going to start the travel agency and everything else on desktop mode, which is completely fine, because the first stream is more or less a chill prequel stream for the season. The home will change. We won't be in space no more. We'll find a new place. I will spend some time doing that. And we will basically spend the first stream yapping about how we're going to handle the next stream. Or the start of the season and how we're going to handle it. We'll see what happens with that. It's going to be great. We're also going to be seeing old faces, maybe some new faces during it. We'll see how that goes, and we hope that the streams and the travel agency's newest season will go nicely. Because, you know, things change and stuff is happening. Things are going to change for me a lot. Because I'll be contacting in 10 to 15 days. I will be contacting my government itself and asking them for help regarding finding a job. So there might be some changes regarding the streams regarding that. We'll see what happens. I can't say anything without having more information. Turns out, regarding my internet, I can't get faster internet. With my fucking modem router, whatever the fuck. Because turns out that people like to just, you know, try and sell you modems and shit by saying, oh yeah, it supports high internet speeds. And then it's just like, you know what? It's not high internet speeds, actually. It is, in fact, Wi-Fi speeds. And then they also put 5,000 different freaking, like, thingamajiggies there. basically stating, oh yeah, we have like ADSL, VDSL, blah blah blah, technologies and everything else, and I'm just like, okay, that's cool and all, but I am dumb, big Benui brain. I need caveman language, unga bunga. So I sent a questionnaire to my service provider, asking them, hey, what is actually changing with your system? Will my apartment where I live support the new system, and what's going to change with that? If I get will my current router support the new system? If not, and I get this new router, will I be able to get a better internet connection to it, 500 megabytes to 1 gigabyte? How much would it cost? Will it have enough ports to be able to be connected to 2 PCs? That is the question I sent to them. I want direct answers, nothing else. That is all I want to know. And yeah, we'll see how that goes. But for now, let's go where Zombie has invited us. After I do a little thingamabobby, which is bing, nameplates off, because we don't need to see the nameplate while we're in there. And let's get the show on the road, basically. Let's go. Ooh, interesting world this time. I have arrived.
Hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Midnight Hour. Come on in and sit on down. Let's get started. You goofy son bitch.
That's the New Year stuff.
Are you fucking dead ass? That's it?
We also got the effect that I joined with, the fucking potty popper fucking blump. And then
Yeah, I saw that one. Glasses on a stick. Let me see this shit. Wow. Riveting stuff. Eh? Thanks, VR chat. Yippee! Honestly, better it end up as like digital garbage than like real garbage, you know what I'm saying?
Hey,
oh,
they did one cool thing.
Which is?
The tip breaks.
Party popper? Okay, fine, I'll give you that.
I get to be fucking nuisance with this. I'm gonna be like, yay!
Yes, you do. Also, I just now realized I said the Midnight Hour instead of the Midnight Zone. I'm a little frazzled right now, guys. I apologize.
Don't worry. So am I.
My Apollo cheese. Yeah, I know. I heard. So sad.
Yeah. Poor Vuk.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be
Oh
fine.
boy. I'm sure.
Hell yeah.
Alright, gang. Let's fucking set up here. And get your nice warm.
Bruh. Pulls out the fucking
Hey
look
man. Shut up. Alright, fucking. Today I have a very special treat for you guys. I will be reading, as promised, Fleshgate, and I will also try my best to squeeze in. Get off your phone, boy! I will try my best to squeeze in 2 stories by H.P. Lovecraft. Dagon and From Beyond. If we are a bit strapped for time because Fleshgate is a bit of a longer story, then I will just keep it to From Beyond because it is the shorter of the 2. So, fucking oh boy. Fleshgate. So this is made by the same guy who did our last story from last week. It breathes, it breeds, it bleeds. And it is a story about something akin to like skinwalkers or mimics. You ever heard anything about that shit, Sleep?
Hell yeah, I have. Skinwalkers are freaking cool and mimics are scary as hell.
I love how when somebody chooses to use the whole mimic idea for something in horror, I love the sense of paranoia that it breeds whenever you're like with a a group of people, because it's like, wait a minute, are you really you? Are you like actually you? Am I actually me? You know, like, and then just like the confusion and like the not know. It's so peak. It's so fucking peak.
Heck yeah, it is.
I love
it's like
horror stories with
mimics are basically
mimics.
the ultimate form of DID.
What the fuck, Sleep?
Think about it. You can't do anything about them. They're technically you, but there's something off.
Sleep, we're trying not to get canceled for the new year, bro. Come on.
Can't stop me. Benui.
Stupid Babbitt. All you think about is carrots.
Nuh-uh. I don't care all about carrots. I care about cooking as well. That's a carrot.
Yeah, I was gonna say cooking carrots. Idiot. Alright, fucking. Let me get this shit pulled up here. Alright, so. Without further ado, this is Fleshgate. Months later than I can remember, all of them, down to their slightest idiosyncrasies and quirks. They were my friends, and they're gone now. There's a hole in my life where they were. Sometimes I'll remember something they said or did, and it'll hit me like a ton of bricks. They're gone now, and I'm the only one left with memories of them. I'm sorry for it being maudlin and bringing everyone down, but I think this is the only way that I can really introduce my story and explain why I feel like I have to type this out. I think that writing this is the only way I can learn to accept that. I'll try to keep those downer tendencies to myself as I'm writing all of this down, but I'll be real, I can't make any promises. I know that being the third wheel in a group can be downright horrible thing, but I think of something worse, which is being a fifth wheel. Now, if you're the third wheel, that makes your group a semi-functioning tricycle. A little wonky, but it'll get you where you're going. If you're the fifth wheel, though, you're left as some obscure car from the 50s that no one remembers or even cares at all about. Imagine not being able to follow the in-jokes and shared history of one couple and multiply that by 2. Yeah, no thanks. Getting stuck as the fifth wheel is twice as bad. That was the frame of mind I had as we all piled into Ian's car to go to Gila National Forest for our hike. I know that's a weird opening to give after my depressing introduction, but I want you all to have an idea of my mindset going in. I'm not quite sure how to describe all of this, but I do know that I need to tell someone. I need someone else to know what happened and help me come to terms with it all. I think the only way I'll be able to explain this would be to help you see it from my perspective as much as possible. So, there we were, driving down to Gila for a hike with me feeling like the fifth wheel wedged between 2 of Ian's friends who I didn't know. 3 of us were crammed in the back seat while Ian and his girlfriend were up front. I look back at an unnecessary bit of moping back in, say, about August 2016 as the last few moments of normalcy I would have in my life. I tried to make the best of the situation. I really did. Ian was always the more social of us. Our mom used to tell us that Ian could make anyone his friend, but that once I had a friend, that I kept them for life. At any rate, it was one of those parental platitudes that was given to us to reassure a socially awkward child that there was nothing wrong. Unfortunately, it would take me almost 19 years to learn that wasn't true. Not even in the slightest. Instead of taking my therapist's diagnosis of social anxiety disorder following a breakdown after an office get-together as a means of seeking treatment, I used it as an excuse to cloister myself off from the rest of the world. I stayed in my apartment when I wasn't working and told myself that I was just doing what was best for me. Of course, Ian decided that wasn't healthy and convinced me to go on a week-long hike with him. It wasn't until I showed up at his house at 6 in the morning on Friday after taking the day off of work that I saw that he had invited others along. I think he saw it as a means of getting me help and breaking me out of my shell by introducing me to his friends. Unfortunately, though, with Ian's extroverted nature, he didn't really realize that I liked being in my shell. It was comfortable, it was safe. A turtle doesn't like being broken out of its shell. It dies. And that's how I felt. After a brief introduction where I caught no one's name except for those who I already knew, my brothers and his girlfriend, Jessica. Due to morning grogginess and the rushed greetings, we packed up the car and left for our hike. It took 3 hours of mostly awkward silence for us to reach our destination. Ian tried to make conversation, but my short responses and the other sleepiness killed him off fairly quickly. It was a commendable effort, though. We found the parking lot near the Gila Cliff Dwellings, and as we unpacked our gear, we took a moment to bask in the beautiful sight that sat perched above us. It's hard to believe that someone could carve an entire town into the face of a cliff, but 700 years ago, people managed to do just that. Given that the parking was empty except for us, we would find out why later, and I was in need of some social lubrication, as I would say, we split off a 6-pack of beer and I took in the majesty of the surrounding area. Here's a picture in case of what you're wondering what the area looks like, and it's just a photo of, like, cliffside dwellings. It's
just
not
a child's
that hard
drawing.
to imagine, trust. It's like a drawing crown. As we finished our beers, got everything prepared, and used the bathrooms, Ian explained what path we would be taking in detail. What we did know, and what my brother had failed to tell us, was that the West Fork Trail had been closed all that summer due to flooding. To be honest, the path wasn't that dangerous. They had us just
What's up, Barbara?
opted not to clear it to the recent flooding, so it was going to be a bit more of a rugged hike. While it wasn't
How you
perilous in itself, it did keep us from encountering other hikers, which would cause us a lot of problems when we actually needed help. Ian figured that we could make about 2-3 miles per hour and we would be able to complete the Gila Loop, which was about 30 miles long with enough time to get back on Sunday and be ready for our respective jobs on Monday. With, no one the wiser that we had backpacked a closed section of the national park. As his explanation was a bit heavy on names and locations, some of which I can't really recall clearly, I'll opt to include a picture rather than send a page writing out everything. For the sake of simplicity, this is the path we were planning to take. It's just a simple loop, see? In addition, I'll include more detailed map of the area so you can orient yourself if you want to trace the trail we took. Though I doubt that'd do you any good. But if you do plan on following along with the path as I tell you about this experience, all I can say is good luck.
Oh boy.
Hell, even as I stare at it now, I just feel as lost now as I was then. I was just going along with the group and trying to keep a positive mind about everything. I wanted to try and do a better job of getting to know Ian and Jessica's friends. I think my circumstances had finally begun to set in. I'd been living in a quiet apartment in New Mexico for over a year, and I had no friends. I would go to work and then home without doing anything else. Sure, sometimes I would spend the entire weekend without saying a single word, without seeing anyone or anything, except the inside of my lonely little apartment. I knew that if I didn't change something quick, that solitude would become the norm, and honestly, that frightened me. Our first day was relatively quiet. We spent a majority of the time taking in the sights, soaking in the sun, and breathing in the nice fresh air. The hike felt like we were constantly moving upward. As I was unaccustomed to hiking, I frequently fell behind, but I never completely lost sight of my brother's friends. While we took a break under the shade of a tree whose bark looked like dried scales from, like, some kind of long dead reptile, I tried to make small talk with everyone. I fell into a quick conversation with Ian and his girlfriend about their work and what they had been up to lately. When it came time to talk to the other two, I only managed to get the conversation going for a few sentences before it just shriveled up and died. I remembered assuring myself that it would be easier when we stopped for the night. We rested for a while before continuing our ascent up the mesa. This is where everyone realized how truly out of my element I was up here. The path up the mesa was... God, it was agonizing for me. It seemed to never stop climbing up and up and up, and there was almost no shade to keep the sun from beating down on us. I was sweating buckets, panting and wheezing. God, whenever they stopped to wait for me to catch up, I would just be wheezing and panting even more. I tried to pretend that I didn't notice their exasperated whispers or side glances, but it was easier said than done. They seemed like the outdoorsy type that had been doing this sort of thing for years. By the time our path started to finally level out, I was ready to turn around and just leave. And it wasn't until we reached the top and looked out over everything that I realized how foolish of an idea that was. Even if I was able to convince Ian to give me the keys and let me walk back to the car and just go home, I had no idea where the hell I was going or what trail markers we had been using. I imagined splitting off from the group and just tromping through poison ivy, bumbling into a gang of banjo-playing hill folk, or getting lost in the dark and wandering in circles until exhaustion or exposure took me, or maybe even a bear. Even if I did manage to hike back to the parking lot, where the hell was I gonna go? Would I just go back home to my empty apartment, eat a Hot Pocket, and feel sorry for myself again? No. For once, I decided to try and tough it out and continue hiking. We made camp at a dry section of the Indian Creek after having hiked a fairly decent amount. Ian was confident that we would make it back on Sunday, and that the next few days were going to be less intensive, allegedly. We ate some food and stowed the rest in a bear bag a ways away from camp. We were passing a bottle of whiskey around in a circle in front of the campfire we had built when the conversation shifted to the most awkward moments everyone had ever experienced. Oh boy. My brother disguised the icebreaker as a conversation starter. Ian retold his story about the first time he met Jessica at a club where he was way too drunk for his own good and ended up puking into her purse. Disgusting. I always hated whenever he told his story. Jessica also bristled at the old memory and jokingly called Ian an asshole for that. Fair enough. Each person shared their stories about a bumbling first kiss where their braces got hooked together, locking themselves out of their dorm rooms in their underwear, their cringe-inducing high school edgelord personality, and caring for a drunken acquaintance who puked into their favorite bag. Then the bottle came to me, and it was my turn to tell them a story. Boy. I instantly knew what my most embarrassing story was at that moment. This whole conversation started. I didn't tell them about the door, though. Instead, I made up a story about ripping my pants in front of a group of people during a work interview that I had probably ripped straight from some 90s sitcom that I had been watching earlier that week. They laughed with me, and I felt like a piece of shit. They had bothered to reveal their most embarrassing moments and were commiserating in their shared experience, and here I was, too afraid to tell them the truth, to tell them about the door. The conversation continued for a bit afterwards as we killed the bottle. When it was finally dead, we all went to bed, still pretty drunk after dousing out the campfire. I woke up in the middle of the night, desperately needing to use the bathroom, and I was still a bit fuzzy from the bullet whiskey. I tromped out into the woods to do my business. It wasn't until I almost was done that Nadia's voice cut through the blackness. She asked me if I had a lighter. Odd, since I hadn't heard her approach, but the sound of her voice made me jump. It would have scared the piss straight out of me had I not just gone to the bathroom. But whatever. I mumbled something about having a lighter back around the camp, and she told me that she had dropped hers and asked me to help her look for it. But I was a bit too out of it to be any good to anyone, so I told her that we'd look for it later. I vaguely remember her mumbling a protest as I stumbled back to my sleeping room. It wasn't until I woke up in the next morning that I realized how stupid I had been. Apparently, they had heard yowling in the surrounding woods all last night. They thought that the sound could have possibly belonged to the Mexican gray wolf, but no one was truly sure. Ian knew that they inhabited the area, but they were pretty uncommon. I paled at the thought of being mauled by a wolf while peeing in the middle of the woods. I decided next time I would wake up Ian before going out in the woods to answer the call of nature. We packed up a while later after a light breakfast and continued on our hike. The second day was admittedly a little better. The overbearing sun I suffered under previously was now hidden behind heavy clouds. We crossed a number of rivers as we followed the 157 to 729 junction. We went along the Little Bear Canyon as we headed towards the TJ Corral, which was about towards the end of the hiking loop. Yeah, I know, right? As the path hadn't been cleared yet, we frequently had to dodge patches of poison ivy and stinging nettles that had grown emboldened by the season's flooding. I fared much better on this hike, and despite nursing a slight hangover, I felt like I was doing much better job getting around with my pack and clunky boots my brother had loaned me. We made camp about midday and purified some water from a nearby river, boiling and adding iodine tablets to them. As the last section of our hike didn't really have many opportunities for potable water. I think that maybe our encounter last night about like the yipping and the yowling wolves had added a bit of seriousness to the hike, as there wasn't as much joking around or conversations this night. We talked a little bit, but mainly just had something small to eat while we stared into the campfire. Ian and Jessica were the first to call it for the night. I stayed up with the others for a bit, but we were mainly silent. The other two slowly went off after a bit, and I decided to enjoy the warmth a bit longer before getting ready to go to bed for the night. Just as I had finished dousing the fire, I remember Gary coming up to me and asking me for the map. He told me he just wanted to plan out the rest of our trip, and that there was a spring nearby that we could really pay a visit to if it wasn't too far out of the way. I obliged, and I grabbed the map from Ian's pack and gave it to him before turning in. I woke up the next morning to the sound of Ian rustling around his bag. He sounded angrier the longer he searched. He knocked mess kits into each other as he peered deep into the pack for something he was missing. Frustrated that he wasn't finding the item he was looking for, he turned the bag upside down and just dumped everything out onto the ground. He was practically ready to tear out his own hair, and it seemed like he had spent the entire morning looking for that one thing. Wanting to know what was up, I walked up to him and we started talking. He asked me, "Hey, man, have you seen the map anywhere? I can't seem to find it." Where's Gary, dude? I gave him the map last night so he could help us find a little detour on the trip so we could visit a spring. Why don't you ask him? He probably knows, I answered. It was then that Ian said something that changed everything. "Gary? What the hell are you talking about? Do you mean Oliver? Don't tell me you thought that his name was..." I explained, No, I'm talking about Gary. Tall guy, you know, kind of lanky. You're joking, right? He looked confused for a few seconds, and it made a questioning sound, like a really old computer trying to process something moments before it catches on fire.
Bro,
What?
Did you hear that growling at the same time?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Bro, that was
Please sleep.
fucking
It's not polite to interrupt the story. Come on, man. The pieces clicked into place and Ian shouted, "Who the hell is Gary?" Getting the attention of everyone in the area. Some guy asked you for our map in the middle of the night and you just gave it to him? You handed our stuff to some random stranger you met in the fucking woods? I tried my best to explain myself to him and just tell him that I knew Gary, and then he did too, since I remember hiking with him the day before, but I just couldn't find the words to convey that point. It was here that Jessica stepped in and asked what was going on. Ian vented vitriol straight to her. "How fucking stupid are you, Evan? Some random guy named Jerry comes out of the woods up to you in the middle of the night, asking for our shit, and you just give it to him? Jesus fucking Christ, we needed that map to get around smoothly since the trails out here haven't been fucking cleared. What is wrong with you?" Ian shouted for about 15 minutes while everyone became aware of our situation. Jessica thankfully managed to calm him down enough so we could figure out our next move. While we weren't completely screwed, as Ian had memorized a large portion of the trail markers, it was going to be a lot, and I mean a lot harder, to navigate the necessary junctions to bring us back around to our car. Regardless, we packed up all our stuff and, making sure that that guy hadn't taken anything else with him, we left. The entire hike, I could feel Ian's eyes drilling into me. The last time I had seen them this furious was just before he had gotten into a fight with Aaron Fredlinger and beat him to a pulp. He got suspended for a week, and Aaron got a black eye, busted lip, and he never said anything about her mother again. Each time we came across a break in the path, we spent a few minutes while Ian tried to remember where to go. The fact that the trails had been closed and the paths were overgrown only served to make everything more difficult. I think that's how we made a wrong turn and began just wandering on the faint trail. I don't even know if that's where it went wrong, since we didn't have the map at that time, but that's my best guess. And further away from home and safety we went. Towards midday, tensions had reached a critical point. Ian frequently mumbled things that would make a sailor blush, while Jessica tried to hide the fact that she was close to crying. Oliver attempted to lighten the situation by telling everyone that we just had to follow the compass and we would get home safe and sound. Oliver's girlfriend didn't really say much. She just stared quietly at her feet while we walked. I think she had a right idea, since Lucas was constantly misplacing his footing and slipping around like he was way drunker than he would have been. He looked like he had downed a fifth of vodka and was now trying to walk home on a tightrope while being randomly shocked with a cattle prod. It was odd to watch him walk like that. And then the realization twisted something deep inside and made me want to throw up. I stopped walking and began talking to Lucas. What's going on with you, man? Ian, still rightfully pissed off at me, took this opportunity to vent a bit. Huh? What are you talking about now? Lucas he's like bumbling and twitching all over the place. What's wrong with him? Don't be a dick, man. You know he has a late stage multiple sclerosis, however the fuck you say it. We told you before the hike started about his condition, man. You don't need to be a fucking asshole. As soon as he said it, the events came rushing back to me as clear as day. I recall Ian pulling me to the side and telling me about his friend's diagnosis and how this was likely going to be the last opportunity he could undertake this long of a hike. So we had to help him and move slowly. I remembered watching him scramble up the trail and thinking about our own mom and her illness. Brought back bittersweet memories of birthday wishes given to us from hospital beds, infusions with disease-modifying therapeutics, and hearing her sob quietly to herself in the middle of the night when she thought we were asleep. Guilt flooded over me, and I stepped forward to apologize to Lucas when it happened. Lucas growled at me the instant I took a step forward, and he dropped to a hunched position on his hands and feet. It almost looked like his skin was bristling at a possible threat, and I could see his broken and decaying teeth as he hissed at all of us before taking off at a hopping stride into the woods. He moved like one of those CGI monstrosities from the last Planet of the Apes movie. His shaky and unstable balance was replaced by a more natural and animalistic gait as he loped into the distance and disappeared amongst the trees. The last thing I saw was what I assumed were its clothes sloughing off of its body, revealing that they weren't actually clothes, but gray folds of skin. Oliver was first to talk. What the fuck? What the fuck was that? As soon as Oliver said those words, it was like a switch had been flipped that set everyone into panic mode. We began to run along the trail as if it would do us any good at all. The only thought in my head was to put as much distance as possible between me and that thing, whatever the fuck it was. I think it took a good 15 minutes for us to run out of energy with our heavy packs and the disorienting nature of the woods. As we tried to catch our breaths, I surveyed the area around us and came to a terrible realization. In our stupid panic, we had run off the path and were now even deeper into the woods. We tried to make sense of what we saw. I just remember Ian mumbling the same phrase over and over. What the hell was that? What the hell was that? The short answer is that it was It was Lucas. The long of it is this. There was no Lucas. Not really. I'm sorry for interrupting the story in the middle like this, but I think now is the best time to try and explain everything. I know how confusing this all seems with Gary and Lucas, and the truth is, I did that because I don't think I could have appropriately explained it to you without first experiencing it from my eyes. I don't know exactly what to call those things, but they do something to your mind, your thoughts. They insinuate themselves into your memories. They wrap themselves up in a wall of your recollections, and even though you know deep down something is terribly wrong, you can't quite put your finger on it. Your group of 4 friends could grow to 5, and you wouldn't be any the wiser. Part of you will stupidly admonish you for ever wondering how many there ever were. You look at it and you recognize the face. You remember events. You recall getting drunk at a bar together. You have memories of them crying on your shoulder after a rough breakup. You can recollect everything that happened between you, and none of it is true. I don't know how it does it, how it crawls into your head somehow, and it makes you see things in a way that benefits them. It can mold memories, but it can't mimic human movement. It walks on 4 claws, not 2 feet. It growls, hisses, and snarls. It doesn't talk. It infiltrates, observes, and waits. It was hunting us and trying to drive us deeper into the woods, and it was fucking succeeding. We never really reached much of a conclusion about what the hell that thing was, but we did reach a consensus that we had to get out of here as soon as possible. I watched as Ian looked around at the forest and came to the same realization that I did. We were lost. We were completely fucking lost, and it was my fault. Our fault. He didn't tell the others. I think he realized that panicking would just get us into more trouble. Instead, he told us to just follow him. With the shock of our encounter setting in, we could do nothing but follow his lead and hope it all worked out. As we walked, we could hear the sounds of distant animals yowling and calling out to each other. The terror of our situation deepened as the others whispered that those were the same noises they had heard the first night out in the woods. Whatever this thing was doing, it was following us, calling out to other things just like it in that area. At the time, I couldn't stop thinking about one of them just barreling out from the underbrush and sinking its black and rotting teeth into my neck before the rest of the group could react. I remember just trying my best to brush off the thought and mentally reassure myself that there were, in fact, 6 of us here. And we had only actually encountered one of those creatures. If violence was needed, we would outnumber them. As the day pressed on and we seemingly wandered south in an attempt to pick up another trail that would lead us back to the parking lot, I couldn't help but shake the nagging feeling in the back of my head. It felt like I had forgotten something important. Some important fact that I should have never forgotten about. It wasn't until Oliver mentioned his wish of being back in the car that Jessica stopped dead in her tracks. We all turned towards her, but We all knew it was coming the second she asked. We only took one car down, right? Ian snapped, more fearful than frustrated. Of course, we did. Remember how cramped everyone was in that tiny-ass Prius with all of our camping gear smashed in the trunk and on our laps? What about it? Jessica went white as if this were the first time that Ian had ever raised his voice to her. She paused for a moment before asking, how many of us are here right now? And how many does your car seat? Ian's car sat 4 people comfortably, 5 uncomfortably. And there were 6 of us out in the woods at that moment. Everything happened at once. Ian swore. Oliver's girlfriend gave us a half shriek and a half gasp while I looked wide-eyed from person to person trying to figure out which of us didn't belong there. And Sarah was the only one who managed to say something, and that was... She hadn't finished her words before her jaw popped open. I didn't mean that it dropped open like she was astonished at something. It popped as it dislocated from her face. The space between her lips was a massive, sickly pink void of inflamed gums that was at least half a foot wide. She looked at us
Scary stories, Jack.
Dead and dull eyes as she slowly raised a twitching hand up to her jaw and tried to lock it back into a more human-esque appearance. She popped it back into place with a hollow-sounding squelch of meat and bone shifting as if nothing was wrong about what just happened before she tried to speak again. Ian was the first to react. He stepped forwards to do something, anything about the failed facsimile of human and swung his walking stick at her while bellowing, "Get out of here!" She hopped back from the attack in a sloppy motion and landed on all 4s. Her body shuddered as if an electrical jolt had passed through her. She slowly backed away from all of us while facing Jessica the entire time. She hissed at us one last time before retreating deeper into the woods with a convulsing lope. It took a moment for all of us to regain our composure before we continued walking while trying to look in every direction at once. I remember Oliver rambling as we walked. He just kept asking questions, although no one was responding to him. Did you see how it moved? You ever see one of those documentaries about mad cow disease? That thing was twitching and moving like one of those infected cows. What the hell was that thing? Was it a person? What kind of person can do that to their body? It tried to talk to us. Oh God. He rambled like that for hours before we just had to stop. We had to tell him to shut up because we were worried about the thing hearing us, though that really wasn't the case. We made him stop talking because it only served to scare us further. Despite stopping for the night, none of us actually slept. We sat around the campfire, listened to the sound of high-pitched whining and yelping coming from all around us. It seemed like any time I actually got close to falling asleep, the calls would start up and jolt me awake. We spoke in hushed whispers and tried to figure out what they wanted with us, even though none of us really wanted that answer to that awful question. The hours dragged on almost endlessly before dawn broke, and begrudgingly we continued our hike. We spent Sunday hiking around and trying to find a familiar site. Without any real sense of where we were and where we were going, our only hope was to stumble across another hiker or find an area with a high enough vantage point that we could survey the entire area. Unfortunately, any elevations we climbed didn't afford a good view of the area, and it was extremely unlikely that we would find another hiker due to the fact that the trail had been closed and still wasn't cleared. Even if we did, what were the chances that we would trust them and could be certain that it wasn't one of those things? Midway through the day, Ian whispered to me,
"Count the people wearing backpacks. One of them is with us again."
I did my best to just casually look over my shoulder and noticed that one of our group was walking without any gear. They trailed behind us and were still in our vicinity. They moved slowly, but didn't show any of the jerky movements of the previous two. The thought that it was learning to mimic our movements greatly unsettled me. Without really thinking, I shucked off my backpack and approached the imposter. Before they knew what was happening, I shoved them as hard as I could. Instant, my hands pressed into their shirt, I felt something slick and warm give way, like the outer layer falling off of a rotten piece of fruit. Their shirt slid off of their body and into my hands, and I quickly realized it was their skin. That thing was actually naked, but it gave the appearance of clothes by altering the color of its almost translucent skin. I immediately dropped the swath of tissue that had sloughed off, and it impacted the ground with a disgustingly wet slap. The creature toppled backwards and began yelping. I can only describe the sound like this. Imagine getting out of your bed in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom. As you're feeling your way through the darkness to get out of your room, you accidentally step on your dog's tail. Imagine that startled yelp of pain and the shock that comes along with it. Now, focus on that emotion you felt when you heard that noise, that sudden surprise and guilt. In reality, the sound it made was nothing like a hurt dog. It just reminded me so much of a wounded pet that I can't differentiate the sounds. Here's the worst part. I shouldn't have felt bad. Those things were stalking and tormenting us. They were likely hunting us, and I felt bad for harming it. I shouldn't have felt bad about it, but it wanted me to. So I did. The thing writhed on the ground on its back for a few seconds, making pitiable noises. It reached back with its arms and pushed itself upright on its hands and the balls of its feet. Its joints popped wetly and its muscles and bones adjusted to fit the new position. It almost crab crawled away while shrieking the entire time as Ian pursued it with his walking stick, hoping to catch up to it and cave its head in, hopefully. It wasn't until the thing and Ian had disappeared from sight that I realized that shrieking wasn't coming from the monster, but from Jessica as well. I was trying to mimic her response. With Ian gone and Jessica's screams possibly drawing more of those things to us, I decided I had to do something. I stepped forward and wrapped her up in my arms. She was shaking like a leaf. I stroked her hair and whispered that it was over. She managed to choke out something about its face. All I could make out was that something terribly wrong was going on with its face. She calmed down as I told her that everything was going to be alright. I didn't believe that myself, honestly, but it was the only thing that I could think of that might bring her even a modicum of comfort. Ian returned, fuming that the monster escaped, and I awkwardly broke off the hug. Ian didn't say anything. He just started walking after motioning us wordlessly to follow. We continued following him, hoping that he would find the way, but knowing that he probably wouldn't. 6 hours later, and we finally managed to settle down for the night. It felt like we had been going in circles all fucking day and made absolutely no progress whatsoever. Hell, for all we knew, the thing could have been tinkering around with our memories and convincing us that familiar landmarks were new and different and luring us deeper into the woods. I didn't tell the others, but I think I knew what those things wanted with us. They wanted to lead us deeper and deeper into the woods. They were trying to force us to exhaustion, and when we were too weak to defend ourselves, they would descend upon us and eat us. Oliver was right about that. If the thing was similar to us in any way, then those twitching spasms were likely some sort of prion disorder that came from eating humans. After eating some jerky, we decided to just not build a fire, as it could possibly draw more of them to us. We reached a conclusion that we should sleep in shifts. I volunteered for the first watch because my insight into the monster's behavior had robbed me of my innate desire to sleep. The others went off with so much as another word. They were exhausted, and it wasn't until an hour into my watch that I realized I was too. Even given the monster's grotesque appearance, everyone needs to sleep. It was inevitable. Jessica joined me by the fire about 2 hours into my watch. Shut up. She admitted that she couldn't sleep after her encounter with the creature. I nodded in agreement. Both of us had seen something terrible that the others hadn't. We talked for a good 30 minutes about what we thought was going on and how everyone was handling it. She was worried about Ian. She confessed that he was acting erratic and that he was scaring her. I wrapped my arm around her for a moment and told her that we were all scared. She looked into my eyes and told me that she was glad I was here, and I felt something twist deep down inside me that I had buried a long time ago when I first met her. The longer she stayed with me on watch, the more personal our conversation had become. She confessed that she and Ian had been fighting a lot recently, and she was wondering if they were going to work it out at all. At the start of their relationship, they were great together. Amazing, even. He made her feel wonderful and comfortable, and now there was something that just didn't feel right. Like, there was something missing. I listened to her talk about everything that was going on in her life, and I knew I had to do something. I knew that if I didn't do it now, I would regret it. I had to tell her about the door. She listened quietly as I told her everything. It was the event that precipitated my breakdown at work and my social anxiety disorder diagnosis at the therapist's office. Everything started off simply enough. One Friday at work, I was in the lunchroom eating my sandwich and just reading a book, as per my usual, while my coworkers talked about their plans for the weekend. One of them was having a housewarming party, and they were inviting everyone at work. I figured that the invitation was only extended to the people he was talking to until he asked me if I would be able to make it on Saturday. As it was the first time I had been ever really invited to hang out after work, I chose to go. I spent all of Saturday getting ready, planning on what were interesting topics to bring up in case there was a lull in conversation, and the bottle of wine I was planning to give him as a housewarming gift. After psyching myself up, I left to go to the party with the bottle in hand and my spirits high. I convinced myself that it was going to be the life of the party, and maybe if I played my cards right, I could finally find a friend at work that would make the time fly by instead of dragging on into nothingness. Oh god, I gotta sneeze.
Bless you.
Good god, thank you. Oh boy, okay. It wasn't until I reached the house that the false bravado began to crumble apart. I stopped in front of the neighbor's house as everywhere else already had a car parked there. It was then that I felt my heart beating like I had just run a mile. I began heading up the driveway with the wine bottle slick in my hands from my palms sweating. It wasn't until I reached the front door that I realized something was terribly wrong. I was breathing faster. All that excitement that had been building up since Friday afternoon was now replaced with something else. Apprehension. All those topics I had thought up seemed boring, and all the reassurances I had given myself seemed hollow. I didn't feel prepared for this at all. At this point, a small part of me whispered something that has stuck to me to this very day. That voice intimidated. That they never really wanted me to come out. They had only given that invitation as a courtesy and didn't actually expect me to come out to their house. The voice said that if I knocked on that door, that I'd be making a fool out of myself. That I wasn't even comfortable in my own skin, so how could I even dare imagine that they would enjoy my company? They wanted to celebrate with their friends. They didn't want to listen to me fumble for something to talk about, and suddenly all those fears flashed in front of me, taunting me, demanding that I knock on the door and make myself look like a fucking idiot. That part of me told me that I was better off alone, and I listened. I turned without even knocking on the door, and I left. No one had come in, and the music was still playing loudly, so I doubt that they would have heard me anyways. I shouldn't have been there in the first place. Maybe I saw them watching me from the window. Maybe I didn't. Maybe they were laughing at me as I drove away, flustered and embarrassed. Maybe they went back to the party and joked about the social recluse who had been seemingly freaked out and run away from their house while I went home and cried in the shower. Maybe. Just maybe. Jessica listened as I told her the story. She smiled sadly as I started to cry into her shoulder. all those feelings I had experienced outside of my coworker's house came rushing back. All that fear, foolishness, and fatalistic failure smashed into me like waves on the shore. She told me soothing words directly into my ear and waited for me to collect myself. Once I did, she pulled away and told me that it wasn't my fault. It was under the moonlight, that her face looked so perfect.
Oh,
It was
boy.
there under the moonlight with her face inches away from mine that I did the worst thing I'd ever done in my life. I, clouded by my emotions, kissed her. It was slow and hesitant. But I kissed her. I looked into her eyes and I saw her beautiful face. She pulled me toward her as she leaned back. Lost in the moment, I held her against me while telling her all the things I should have said when I first met her and realized that I loved her. I held her like that for a few moments, afraid that if I let her go, I'll lose this perfect moment. She was warm and she smelled like wildflowers. She smelled like happiness. For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, I felt comfortable and content. I don't know when I drifted off, but I do remember waking up. In the love-drunk excitement of the previous night, I didn't think once about Ian or the consequences of my decision. I only thought about Jessica and the feelings that I had tried to keep buried for so long. What I did last night was a beautiful mistake. I convinced her to cheat on him with me. I needed to tell him before the truth came out. I needed him to understand how I felt. I needed to apologize. I got up from the ground and stretched. Jessica was gone. I assumed she had gone back to her sleeping role in the middle of the night. I walked over to Ian, who was just waking up. He rubbed the sleep out of his eyes and asked me if I stayed up all night. The words just bled out of me, and once they started, I just couldn't stop. I don't know what happened, man. We were talking one moment, and the next... Oh, Jesus, I didn't mean for it to happen. You know I love you, man. I wouldn't do anything to hurt you. It just happened, and now I can't take it back. Jessica's cry of surprise cut me off before I could get any further. Both me and Ian turned to the sound of her distress, and we knew instantly what had happened. The backpacks, with her compass, food, and water, had been stolen. It knew. Don't you see it? God damn it! It knew that we could identify it without a backpack. And it couldn't shape its skin to take the appearance of one, so it stole them away from us. Now, next time it wormed its way into our group, we wouldn't be any the wiser. Jessica and I never talked that night. Jessica had never left my brother's side that night. They had zipped their sleeping rolls together. She didn't open up to me about her worries, and I never actually kissed her. I poured my heart out to a thing wearing Jessica's skin. While it was in my arms as it implanted memories of conversations never shared into my mind, I confessed my truest feelings to an ersatz entity masquerading as a person, and I felt sick. Absolutely sick. The others woke quickly after hearing Jessica screaming. We quickly searched around the area, hoping to find some scrap of food or indication of where our stuff had been taken to. We found nothing. It was long gone. We had no food, no water, and no hope. We had no way of telling when one of those things was hijacking our heads or pretending to be part of our group just so it could distract us. With our compass gone, we had no means of following a set direction and hoping to pick the trail back up. In short, we were screwed with a capital S. Oliver demanded to know just exactly what I was doing last night. He wanted to know how I could be so careless as to fall asleep when I should have been watching over them and our gear. Too embarrassed to tell him the truth, I just lied, and I told him that someone had come around in the middle of the night to relieve me from my shift. I didn't mention that it was one of those things impersonating Jessica. I couldn't bear to look either my brother or his girlfriend in the eyes at that point. Oliver started to yell, but stopped when he saw I was on the verge of tears. I don't know if it was mercy or disgust that caused him to stop. At this point, it doesn't even matter. We gathered up the only thing that they hadn't taken in the night, our sleeping rolls, and continued walking. The hike without water or the prospect of food was unbearable, to say the least. We were already exhausted, and the realization that we were going to soon be starving and dehydrated only served to sap more of our energy away. Within a few hours of our march, my mouth felt gummy and dry and needed water desperately. While we were still under the canopy of leaves, the temperature was still in the high 80s and low 90s. It didn't take long for dehydration to set in. I kept licking my lips in an attempt to keep them moist, but I could feel them beginning to crack as my saliva began to dry up. As we walked, Oliver picked up his pace and caught up with me. I looked over at him and knew without him saying anything that another one of those things had joined our group. He whispered,
"Don't look directly at it. Just keep it in the corner of your eyes. I think that's how it messes with your mind. It would explain why you remember that guy from that night, but the rest of us can't. You saw him, but the rest of us didn't. Don't get close. Just keep it in the corner of your eyes. It's been trailing us for about half an hour now. I think it just wants to watch and follow us."
I pretended to be cracking my neck and looked at the tag along in my peripheral vision. It trailed behind us by about a dozen feet. In its resting state, its facial features appeared almost staticky. You can make out eyes and a nose, but it was constantly shifting and rippling like bubbling plastic. At this point, we were too tired to even bother with chasing it off. We just kept walking and hoped that it wouldn't try to join the group. It seemed almost content to keep its distance and keep us in its line of sight. It followed us for about 2 miles before it broke off towards the trees with a shambling, awkward gait. We were too tired to even try and set up a shift system. We just huddled together in an attempt to convince ourselves that we were safer when we were closer together. Every time one of us got comfortable enough to drift off, those things just start making noise again. The noises started off as high-pitched yips, those sounds that just traveled seemingly for miles. As the night drew on, they became more aggressive. I remember one time I was drifting off hearing the grating rasp of my name. Things weren't just following us, they were learning. They were perfecting their mimicry. The thought disturbed me more than the idea of them out there just watching us in the darkness. How long would it take them to become more human than human? What would they do once they were capable of walking amongst people again? I drifted off to sleep with that thought beating around in my head like a man trapped inside a wall. We caught up on Wednesday morning and left without a word. A small part of my brain nagged at me and told me that it should actually be Tuesday morning, but I knew it was Wednesday. Why didn't I have memories, any memories at all, of the day before? At this point, there was nothing left to say. I don't think anyone wanted to theorize on the missing day from all of our recollection. Some of us had been awake all night without any food or water or sleep or anything. The constant stress had completely worn us down. It was just that. Nothing else. Unbridled fear and paranoia, and yet we continued to walk. Continued hiking in the same direction that we had been going in, with the false hope that we would come across someone, anyone. In the end, our hike looked more like a death march. My feet were covered in blisters that had ruptured and plastered the soles of my feet to my socks. Every step felt like I was tearing open the sores a bit more. In an attempt to take my mind off of the discomfort, I focused on my brother, who was walking in front of me. It wasn't as much walking as he was limping forward. He had stopped using his walking stick and was dragging it behind him like a broken limb. I watched as he stepped over a rock and the walking stick slipped out of his hands. He kept dragging himself forward as if nothing had happened. He didn't even register it falling out of his hands. It was at that point that I knew something was wrong. I knew that my brother wasn't my brother anymore. The evidence of the entire missing memories of a day, the fact that we were going deeper into the woods, his awkward gait, it was enough to tell me that. I just knew he wasn't my brother. Not anymore, was what my brain told me. I quickly picked up his stick as I passed by it. Amy went to call out to him and ask if he was alright, but I shushed her. I was so sure that one of those things had replaced him and was now leading us deeper into the woods. I realized that I would only have one chance at this. One chance to do something about our problem. The instant that it knew that we knew, we would try and run away. All it would take was one good swing to the back of its head, and we would be able to take out one of those things. The sturdy stick had a bit of weight to it, about 5 or 6 pounds. Definitely enough to crack open a skull if it was swung hard enough. I began walking faster while trying to avoid the underbrush that might give away my approach. The thing wearing my brother's skin continued limping forward as I drew closer. I waited until I was within swinging distance before raising the walking stick above my head. My heart was beating in my chest and my palms were so sweaty that I felt like the stick would slide right out of my hands. I kept moving forward, completely unaware of what I was about to do. I whispered, "I'm sorry," just before I swung the walking stick down with all my strength. Ian turned to face me as he mumbled groggily, "Sorry for what?" My muscles locked and I stopped mid-swing, and the stick just stopped inches away from his face. He blinked in surprise before muttering, "What's wrong?" His voice sounded distant, empty, like he was in between a waking and sleep state. It was then that I knew the extent of his condition. He was pale It looked like the slightest breeze would blow him over. He wasn't one of those things. He was delirious from dehydration, sleep deprivation, and starvation, and the walking stick fell out of my hands and bounced on the ground next to us. I dragged my tongue across my lips and felt like I was licking a sandpaper sheet. I whimpered, Jesus, Ian, I thought you were one of those things. I almost... Oh God, I'm so sorry. He didn't react to my apology. He just turned around and continued walking in the direction we were going in. Amy just watched as everything unfolded before numbly following after him. Oliver shook his head sadly, but didn't look any better. His eyes were glazed and his lips were cracked and red from rubbing at them. I watched my brother shambling forward, and it reminded me of one of those old voodoo movies where someone was put into a trance and forced to work until they die from exhaustion. His mouth hung open and he moved like he was being dragged along on puppet strings. I picked up the walking stick and began to follow them. I wondered how much longer he had left in him, and what any of us could do if he just fell over and stopped walking. I wondered how much longer any of us had. I didn't know, and I still don't know how long we walked. Everything just melted together in a muddled malaise at the time. I remember the sun setting and rising, but I can't recall how many times, even though I tried my hardest. I remembered a muddled melange of sleepless nights and wakeless days. I remember losing my footing and tripping a few times, but I barely felt it. The third time, I didn't even realize I was laying on the ground until Jessica stepped on me as she was passing by. There was no apology. She was far too gone to recognize what she had stepped on. I dragged myself to my feet and felt lightheaded, but continued putting one foot in front of the other. The fifth time I fell, I wondered if it would have been better to just lay down and wait to die. An excited yelp behind me from one of those things drove me to my feet instantly. It wasn't until we bumped into the sign for Little Bear Canyon that I realized how close we were to actual salvation. We were nearly there. The post for the Little Bear Canyon also had a branching sign that pointed in the direction for TJ Corral, which was only a few miles from where we started at the Gila Cliff Dwellings. If we walked along Route 15, we would surely be there in time. Ian was heading in the right direction and we were almost home free. In my excitement, I began calling to the others to let them know that the end was near. I looked around me and shouted, Jessica, Ian, Oliver, Heather, Amy! I know where we need to... The words died on my lips as I counted the names and realized it wasn't over yet. The others kept moving as if they hadn't heard me talking. The imposter shuffled alongside us and for once, it was easy to identify them. I don't know whether or not they had let their guard down or something after seeing our conditions, but this one was quite obvious. She moved slowly, but her movements didn't convey her exhaustion. Everyone else was sweating and looked like the Walking Dead, but she was fine. I waited for her to get close enough to follow the trail. The others were going down before I raised Ian's walking stick and growled, "Turn around right fucking now! I can see you!" Slowly, she turned around. and I felt my heart skip a beat. She looked almost exactly like Jessica, except for a brown tinge to her hair. Fuck, she could have even been her twin. I knew it was planning what it was planning before it even opened its mouth and asked,
What are you doing, Evan?
"Don't call me that." I winced.
What are you rambling about? Please move out of the way. We're almost safe from those things.
I know what you are. Heather turned white at the realization. She began speaking quickly. I'm not one of those things. Please, Evan, you have to remember there were 6 of us. Those things, they want us to think that there were only 5 so they could take one of us without the others caring. Those things don't want us at all. They only want the weakest one. Please go before they catch. Shut up! I snapped. I raised the walking stick in my hand and brandished it at her. Think about it, Evan. Do I move like one of those things? Do I speak like them? That should be enough to prove I'm human. No. Ian's my brother. Jessica's his girlfriend. I'm your girlfriend! I sat on your lap on the car ride. Please don't kill me. Evan, I love you. Don't you remember? Evan, I love you! I lowered the stick that was in my hand as memories suddenly bombarded me. It was all so clear now. I had met her one night when my brother forced me to go out to a club with him. Heather had been sitting at the bar all night drinking after a particularly bad week. It wasn't until she tried to stand up and fell into my arms that we actually talked. I remembered lazy Sundays in bed watching cheesy B sci-fi movies. I remembered holding her close to me after a long day and hearing her whisper sweet nothings into my ear. I remembered our life together. I rasped, Heather, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. She cooed, Evan, it's not your fault. It really isn't. I forgive you. It's okay. She went to touch me and I sprang back like I had been bitten by a snake. The instant I heard those words, I knocked. The stick caught her, unaware, in the side of her face. I felt her jaw give way under the sudden force of my attack. She burbled through broken teeth. I love... The second strike dented her temple as the temporal bone shattered. She kept trying to talk, but it was too late. Too much damage had been done. That door was shut to me now. I kept swinging the walking stick down onto her head until it splintered and snapped. I looked up from her twitching body and saw my brother watching me in horror. Heather, oh my god. I spoke through gritted teeth and regarded him with red-rimmed eyes. Come on, we have to go. No. He went to keep walking, but I walked past him. I didn't want to explain it to him. He eventually ran ahead, invigorated with the prospect of finding rescue finally at the end of the road. I looked behind me one last time. The last thing I saw was one of those things tracking away Heather's corpse. It looked emaciated and half mad with starvation. At that very moment, I wasn't afraid of the thing. I just felt pity. Whether or not it forced that emotion on me, I'll never know. Or that I really care at that moment. I turned away and caught up with the others on Route 15. We were on the road for 15 minutes before we managed to finally flag down a car, and an ambulance was called for us. The doctors said that our prolonged exposure to the elements combined with our starvation and dehydration, triggered the auditory and visual hallucinations we experienced. It's the typical response you'd be given after hearing our half-dead ramblings about creatures warping their flesh, and our memories drive us to the brink of death so they could prey on us when we were at our weakest. We spent almost a week there while receiving treatments, recounting our horrific experiences, and then subsequent psych evaluations before we were released. At our discharge, the doctor told us how lucky we'd been. Most people didn't spend almost 10 days lost in the woods and live to tell the tale. I wanted to talk to the others about it. I know for a fact that I can only recall about roughly 7 of those days out of 10. Why do I have these massive gaps in my memories? Why do I remember things that never happened? Could never happened? Why do I remember smelling wildflowers in my muddled memories? I tried to broach the topic with the others, but Ian and Jessica refused to talk with me about it. They insist that it was all a byproduct of the trauma, malnourishment, and sleep deprivation. It's really not. They don't really know Oliver or Amy, so that's off the table too. They just want to forget, but I refuse to forget. Here's the thing. I still remember Nadia asking me to help her find her lighter. I recall staying up late and talking with her by the fire while she smoked like a chimney. I can recite Gary's terrible puns that he'd make almost about everything, and Lucas's determination at hiking this trail while slowly succumbing to the effects of his multiple sclerosis. I can recall whispering sweet nothings to Jessica under the glow of the full moon. I can envision still that moment clear as day, even months later. I know the conversation we had, word for word. I can remember the feeling of her lips against mine, the smell of her hair as I pressed myself against her when I reached that one true moment of connectivity. I remember Heather pleading and begging me not to kill her. Despite writing this all months later, I can still see all of those things clearly. Sometimes, late at night, I can even remember driving up to Gila National Park with Heather sitting in my lap, making jokes with me and telling me how fun our hike was going to be. Sometimes I think about that memory more than I should. Since I can't talk to my brother or Jessica about this, I had to find some other outlet. I guess I'm writing all this for that one reason. Catharsis. In the end, I keep wondering if what I did was right. Did I make the right choice? I want you to read this and tell me that I had no other option. But the risk of one of them escaping into the city forced my hand. I know that's not the case. I could have walked away or tried to scare her off, but I didn't. What kind of person can look into someone's eyes, remember all the things they did and the life that they had, and do what I did? Who can have all those memories and still beat someone to death? Doesn't matter if none of it was real, because in that moment it was to me. Who can look at someone and feel such love for them before you kill them? To answer that question is simple now that I ask myself aloud. I just don't like the answer. And that was Fleshgate. What a fucking wild ride. Holy hell.
That was actually a super good one.
Yeah, I love that one. I fucking do apologize for all the bungling of fucking reading it and shit.
No, that was fun.
I fucking didn't realize that my fucking Mouth was so dry.
You were starving. Dry ass having lips.
Man, shut up. I don't lick him now.
But that's funny because whenever you were reading that, I was like recounting the names of the characters, and I was like, every now and then you would see my hand just go up, and I'm like, wait a fucking second.
Wait a minute.
Because
Something ain't right.
the first point where something went wrong was when they were at the first campfire, and Jessica was asking about the lighter.
Mm-hmm.
However, the funny part is at the end when you were recounting the names, there was one name that was never said before, and that was Nadia.
Mm-hmm.
Nadia
Oh
was...
no, it was not. It was Nadia. I'm just a fucking idiot and I can't read.
Did you read Jessica's name as Nadia?
Yeah. Also, that's a weird as fuck way to spell a name like that. Her name was not Jessica. It was Yessica with a Y. It was Yessica.
Oh, Jessica.
C-A. Yessica.
So it's not Jessica with a J, it's a Jessica with a yes.
Listen, I want to state this for the record, or chat. I am not white, so hearing a name like that, any name that I have heard in the past where any letter like Jessica, or I've even heard Madeline with this, replaced with a Y to either Jessica, or I knew this poor bitch in fucking in my mortuary science class in a college. Her name was Yadeline.
Oh my god.
These bitches were that bitch was the
Weird
whitest
names.
white girl I've ever met in my life. Like, if you guys know about the Visco trend that was going on during like 2020, she was one of those girls. Oh my god, she was like neon white. She was crazy white. Only white people would do that thing. Let's be real. Only white people. American white people.
Yeah, but like, yeah, in that story with all the names, the three names that never came up except for like once or twice were Gary, Lucas, and Heather, along with Nadia. That's technically, that's four names, but regardless. Those four names, they stated at the beginning two names that were certain. And that was, what was it, Ian and then Kevin. Because Kevin was the main dude, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And Ian was his brother. Then we had Jessica, which was a confirmed character because that was the girlfriend. The only uncertainty were the two strangers, which was, what was it, Oliver and...
Amy. Oliver
and Amy. Who, their names, I don't recall you saying them at the beginning at any point in time.
We knew about Oliver, but we got Amy kind of late in the game, which I think was to a benefit because it introduced a different name as well in there. And I was like,
And the fact that those two, Oliver and Amy, were the mysterious characters that were friends of all fucking Ian and the fucking Jessica, but they never really spoke or did anything. So you never knew if they were
really,
actually...
no.
Yeah, because at no point in time did they really speak at all. But then you had Gary, who spoke normally. You had Nadia, who spoke normally at the beginning, asking for the lighter. But it was stated afterwards that these creatures, or whatever the hell, while we were going through, that they couldn't pronounce things perfectly or mimic. So there's a chance that Nadia and Gary were actually part of the group but got dragged off very early. And then they were questioning, did they come in there with one car or two cars?
Exactly. And I love the layers upon layers of fucking questioning and self-doubt, because realistically, and this happens a lot of the time when we're just hanging out with friends, even in VR chat, it's like we'll be chilling in like a public or in like a friends plus, all on like green or blue, and a friend of a friend joins and they're only there for that friend, so you like never interact with them, and then like maybe at some point in the future the friend brings up their other friend and they're like, oh yeah, so and so does this thing, and they're like, you're like, huh, who? It's It's like, so and so, you met them like 2 days ago. Like, what? Really?
Yeah.
I don't remember talking to them. They didn't talk to me. That's exactly a thing that would happen, and I love that use of like a totally normal social dynamic of just like your brother's friend and their partner to like add even more doubt and paranoia. It was so perfect. I love it a lot.
Yeah, and that whole story was interesting from start to finish because it uses a familiar thing of like, hey, the dudes are going on a hiking trip. You get introduced to 3 characters: the main dude, brother, girlfriend, and then 2 extras who are not named until a certain point in time. They explain that they went by car there, but at this point, we already know that this is not explained during the story. It is after the story was done because the dude's writing his memories. Because Jessica questions, did they come in there with 1 or 2 cars?
Exactly.
Heather, at the end, was like, remember I sat on your lap, indicating that they would have had 2 cars, and at the end, they never went back to their car or cars. They got picked up by a random stranger and an ambulance, and not only that, at one point they had that one dude following them without a backpack. And he just trails off into the woods, and then there's the gaps between memories of day 7 and 10.
Yeah, exactly, dude. It's like
they were starving, they were deprived and everything else, so it could have been that they had originally actually had Lucas in there, they had Gary, they had Heather, they had Nadia. Nadia disappeared extremely early. Gary disappeared with the map. Lucas turns out to be a creature, and then you had Heather, who wasn't a creature. So possibly the dude without the backpack was Gary,
very good,
or Nadia, who just trail off. I think it was actually Lucas, not Lucas, Gary, because they stated it was a dude.
Yes, absolutely. And I love the scene with Evan, the protagonist, attacking this Heather, because the interactions in the past with the other creatures have always been like really sudden, and the creature is just like, oh, you found me, okay, bye, you know?
Yeah, and they always had some giveaway, for example, no backpack, or walking with a shamble, or something like that. And in this case, it was like, hey, something's not quite right here, because she's walking normally, but she's not tired, unlike everyone else.
Exactly.
And then that whole thing with the freaking scent. Drugs?
It's
alcohol?
No, because this is like an actual thing. The biggest thing that triggers memories is smells.
Yes.
It's like the smell of like a freshly opened can of like original Monster will like make you think of like when you were a teenager, you know, back when you were in school and stuff. Or like for me, the smell of cigarettes takes me back to when I was in high school, and
the scent
for
of a certain
Void,
food.
for Void, the smell of like certain food cooking reminds him of like his grandmother. It is the biggest trigger for our memories. So I think that's what the whole wildflowers thing was. I think.
Yes. But whom did he remember at that moment? Because he was apparently with Jessica, but wasn't with Jessica.
It's so confusing.
So it's possible he was with Heather.
Maybe, yes. Also, hi, Jack. Sorry I couldn't say hi to you. I was fucking, as Sleep said, I was locked the fuck in reading that story. I was struggling a little bit, but I think I did pretty alright.
Yeah, and it was an extremely good story. That was really fun, and you actually went for an hour and a half, at the very least, almost.
Wow! I did great. Alright, in that case, we will save Dagon for another time. I will now move on to reading From Beyond. Also, I wanted to incite like a bit of paranoia in you. That screaming is in the world. I totally did hear it.
Yeah, I know it's in the world. I just had to do it because it came at the perfect fucking timing at the first moment when something was going wrong, and I heard it. I was like, wait a fucking minute. Because I thought you had like something that where you trigger it manually or something, and I was like, huh?
Oh, I wish I was that fucking big right now. It's because,
There's doors.
yeah, I'm a fucking loser.
And that's fucking. What the fuck is his name again? The fucking black creature who
Rush.
chases you?
Rush.
Yeah, Rush.
Or no, you're
Is it-
thinking of
no, not Rush.
Seek, but it doesn't sound like Seek or Rush, because Seek doesn't make noise. I think
It's the same as the dude
figure
who
in
you
the
hide
library.
in the closet in Terrors of Nowhere, because that's the same sound he makes.
Yeah, that's Rush. Maybe, I don't know. I'm
So that
probably
has to be
just not
Rush.
paying enough attention. Probably.
I
God,
have an
fighting
audio
against Rush
memory.
in fighting against fucking Rush in Terrors is like actually fucking ass. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Because you can't, just like in the game, like in the actual game in Roblox, you can't stay in the closet for too long because it'll fucking eat you.
Yeah, if you stay in Terrors for too long, you just die.
Mm-hmm. It'll get you.
Yeah.
Alright. So, let's do a little hydration check.
check,
Drink your-
Remember to drink water or something else.
Mm-hmm. All my homies dinking they oiter. Alright, gang. Now, we're gonna wrap up this story time with a nice little short story. Short, I put that lightly. And, from a good old racist little manlet, H.P. Lovecraft. Now, this fucking weirdo, god, visionary horror and like science fiction writer. What a strange little
Good
man.
writer, but a
He
weird
was.
person.
What an odd little man he is. Good lord.
What a Napoleon.
But yes. Oh god. Okay, but today, we will be reading From Beyond by H.P. Lovecraft. Now,
Shut the fuck.
Rude. I personally really like a lot of I love a lot of Lovecraft's work because I have a deep fear of like the ocean and stuff, and that's like his whole thing is
I love
Cthulhu,
the ocean.
great dreamer. Fucking freakazoid. But he also does a lot of stuff with space, like Color Out of Deep Space, which is one of my favorite stories of all time. I might read that in the future.
He does cosmic horror and... Yeah, well, everything's cosmic horror. Even Cthulhu's cosmic horror.
Yeah, technically. But yes, he has made a lot of good stuff. A lot of good things that have been like either badly adapted into like movies or media, or like very well adapted into movies or
Games.
media. Games too. Like I want to say Still Wakes the Deep was inspired by Lovecraft as well.
It is 100%
Funny.
inspired by it.
Okay, cool. I thought so. Yes, we will be reading From Beyond by H.P. Lovecraft. Horrible beyond conception was the change which had taken place in my best friend, Crawford Tillinghast. I had not seen him since that day, 2 months and a half before, when he had told me toward what goal his physical and metaphysical researches had been leading. When he had answered my odd and almost frightened remonstrances by driving me from his laboratory and his house in a burst of fanatical rage. I had known that he now remained mostly as shut-in the attic laboratory with that accursed electrical machine, eating little and excluding even the servants, but I had not thought that even a brief period of 10 weeks could so alter and disfigure any human creature. It is not pleasant to see a stout man suddenly grow thin, and it is even worse when the baggy skin becomes yellowed or grayed the eyes sunken, circled, and uncannily glowing, the forehead veined and corrugated, and the hands tremulous and twitching. And if added to this there be a repellent unkemptness, a wild disorder of dress, a bushiness of dark hair with white at the roots, and an unchecked growth of pure white beard on a face once clean shaven, the cumulative effect is quite shocking. But such was the aspect of Crawford Tillinghast on the night of his half-coherent message brought me to his door after my weeks of exile. Such the specter that trembled as it admitted me, candle in hand, and glanced fervidly over its shoulder, as if it fearful of unseen things in the ancient lonely house set back from Benevolent Street. That Crawford Tillinghast should ever have studied science and philosophy was a mistake. These things should have been left to the frigid and impersonal investigator, for they offer two equally tragic alternatives to the man of feeling and action: despair if he fail in his quest, and terrors unutterable and unimaginable if he succeeded. Tillinghast had once been the prey of failure, solitary and melancholy, but now I knew, with nauseating fears of my own, that he was the prey of success. I had indeed warned him 10 weeks before, when he burst forth with his tale of what he felt himself about to discover. He had been flushed and excited then, talking in a high and unnatural, although always pedantic voice. "What do we know," he had said, "of the world and the universe about us? Our means of receiving impressions are absurdly few, and our notions of surrounding objects infinitely narrow. We see things only as we are constructed to see them, and gain no idea of their absolute nature. With 5 feeble senses, we pretend to comprehend the boundlessly complex cosmos. Yet other beings with a wider, stronger, different range of senses might not only see very differently at the things we see, but might see and study whole worlds of matter, energy, and life which lie close at hand, yet can never be detected with the senses we have. I have always believed that such strange, inaccessible worlds exist at our very elbows, and now I believe I have found a way to break down the barriers. I am not joking. Within 24 hours, that machine near the table will generate waves acting on unrecognized sense organs that exist in us as atrophied or rudimentary vestiges. Those waves will open up to us many vistas unknown to man, and several unknown to anything we consider organic life. We shall see that which dogs howl in the dark, and that which cats prick up their ears after midnight. We shall see these things and other things which no breathing creature has yet seen. We shall overleap time, space, and dimensions, and without bodily motion to peer the bottom of creation." When Tillinghast said these things, I remonstrated. For I knew him well enough to be frightened rather than amused. But he was a fanatic, and drove me from the house. Now, he was no less a fanatic, but his desire to speak had conquered his resentment, and he had written me imperatively in a hand that could scarcely be recognized. As I entered the abode of the friend I so suddenly metamorphosed into a shivering gargoyle, I became infected with the terror which seemed stalking in all the shadows of the house. The words and beliefs expressed 10 weeks before seemed bodied forth in the darkness beyond the small circle of candlelight, and I sickened at the hollow, altered voice of my host. I wished the servants were about, and did not like it when he said that they had all left 3 days previously. It seemed strange that old Gregory, at least, should desert his master without telling, as tried a friend as I. It was he who had given me all the information I had of Tillinghast after I was repulsed and enraged. Yet I soon subordinated all my fears to my growing curiosity and fascination. Just what Crawford Tillinghast now wished of me, I could only guess. But that he had seen some stupendous secret or discovery to impart, I could not doubt. Before I had protested at his unnatural pryings into the unthinkable, now that he had evidently succeeded to some degree, I almost shared his spirit. Terrible though the cost of victory appeared. Up through the dark emptiness of the house, I followed the bobbing candle in the hand of this shaking parody on man. The electricity seemed to be turned off, and when I asked my guide, he said it was for a definite reason.
It would be too much. I would not dare,
he continued to mutter. I especially noted his new habit of muttering, for it was not like him to talk to himself. We entered the laboratory in the attic, and I observed the detestable electrical machine glowing with a sickly, sinister violet luminosity. It was connected with a powerful chemical battery and seemed to be receiving no current. For I recalled that in its experimental stage it had sputtered and purred when in action. In reply to my question, Tillinghast mumbled that his permanent glow was not electrical in any sense that I could understand. He now seated me near the machine so that it was on my right, and turned a switch somewhere below the crowning cluster of glass bulbs. The usual sputtering began, turned to a whine, and terminated in a drone so soft as to suggest a return to silence. Meanwhile, the luminosity increased, waned again, then assumed a pale ochre color, or blend of other colors, which I could neither place nor describe. Tillinghast had been watching me, and noted my puzzled expression.
Do you know what that is?
He whispered.
That is ultraviolet.
He chuckled oddly, at my surprise.
You thought ultraviolet was invisible, and so it is. But you can see that and many other invisible things now.
Listen to me. The waves from that thing are waking 1,000 sleeping senses in us. Senses which we inherit from eons of evolution, from the state of detached electrons to the state of organic humanity. I have seen truth, and I intend to shew it to you. Do you wonder how it will seem? I will tell you. Here, Tillinghast seated himself directly opposite me, blowing out his candle and staring hideously into my eyes. Your existing sense organs, ears first, I think, will pick up many of the impressions, for they are closely connected to the dormant organs. Then, there will be others. You have heard of the pineal gland? I laughed at the shallow endocrinologist, fellow dupe and fellow parvenu of the Freudian. That gland is the great sense organs of organs. I have found out. It is like sight in the end and transmit visual pictures to the brain. If you are normal, that is the way you ought to get most of it. I mean, get most of the evidence from beyond. I looked about the immense attic room with the sloping south wall, dimly lit by rays which the everyday eye cannot see. The far corners were all shadows, and this whole place took on a hazy unreality which obscured its nature and invited the imagination to symbolism and phantasm. During the interval that Tillinghast was silent, I fancied myself in some vast and incredible temple of long-dead gods. Some vague edifice of innumerable black stone columns reaching up from a floor of damp slabs to a cloudy height beyond the range of my vision. The picture was very vivid for a while, but gradually gave way to a more horrible conception. That of utter, absolute solitude in infinite, slightless, spaceless, soundless existence. There seemed to be a void, and nothing more, and I felt a childish fear which prompted me to draw from my hip pocket the revolver I always carried after dark since the night I was held up in East Providence. Then, from the furthermost reaches of remoteness, the sound softly glided into existence. It was infinitely faint, subtly vibrant, and unmistakably musical, but held a quality of surpassing wildness which made its impact feel like a delicate torture to my whole body. I felt sensations like those one feels when accidentally scratching ground glass. Simultaneously, there developed something like a cold drought, which apparently swept past me from the direction of the distant sound. As I waited breathlessly, I perceived both the sound and wind were increasing. The effect being to give me an odd notion of myself as tied to a pair of rails in the path of a gigantic, approaching locomotive. I began to speak to Tillinghast. As I did so, all the unusual impressions abruptly vanished. I saw only the man, the glowing machine, and the dim apartment. Tillinghast was grinning repulsively at the revolver which I had almost unconsciously drawn, but from his expression I was sure he had seen and heard as much as I, if not a great deal more. I whispered what I had experienced, and he bade me to remain as quiet and receptive as possible.
Don't move,
he cautioned.
for in these rays we are able to see as well as to be seen. I told you that the servants left, but I didn't tell you how. It was that thick-witted housekeeper. She turned on the lights downstairs after I had warned her not to. The wires picked up sympathetic vibrations. It must have been frightful. I could hear the screams up here, in spite of all I was seeing and hearing from another direction. And later, it was rather awful to find those empty heaps of clothing around the house.
Mrs. Healshire's clothing were close to the front of a hall switch.
That's how I know she did it.
We got them all. But so long as we don't move,
We are fairly safe. Remember, we're dealing with a hideous world in which we're practically helpless. Keep still.
the combined shock of the revelation and of the abrupt command gave me a kind of paralysis, and in my terror my mind again opened to the impressions coming from what Tillinghast called beyond. I was now in a vortex of sound and motion, with confused pictures before my eyes. I saw the blurred outlines of the room, but from some point in space where there seemed to be pouring a seething column of unrecognizable shapes or clouds, penetrating the solid roof at a point ahead and to the right of me. Then I glimpsed the temple-like effect again. But this time the pillars reached up into an aerial ocean of light, which sent down one blinding beam along the path of the cloudy column I had seen before. After that scene, which almost wholly kaleidoscopic, and in the jumble of sights and sounds and unidentifiable sense impressions, I felt that I was about to dissolve or in some way lose the solid form that I currently had. One definite flash I shall always remember. I seemed for an instant to behold a patch of strange night sky filled with shining and revolving spheres. And as it receded, I saw that the glowing suns formed a constellation or galaxy of settled shape, the shape being the distorted face of Crawford Tillinghast. At another time, I felt the huge, animate things brushing past me and occasionally walking or drifting through my supposedly solid body, and thought I saw Tillinghast look at them as though his better trained senses could catch them visually. I recalled that he had said of the pineal gland, and wondered what he saw with his preternatural eye. Suddenly, I became possessed of a kind of augmented sight. Over and above the luminous and shadowy chaos arose a picture which, though vague, held the elements of consistency and permanence. It was indeed somewhat familiar, for the unusual part was superimposed upon the usual terrestrial scene, much as a cinema view may be thrown upon the painted curtain of a theater. I saw the attic laboratory, the electrical machine, and the unsightly form of Tillinghast opposite me. But all of the space unoccupied by the familiar material objects, not one particle was vacant. Indescribable shapes, both alive and otherwise, were mixed in disgusting disarray, and close to every known thing were whole worlds of alien, unknown entities. It likewise seemed that all the known things entered into the composition of other unknown things, and vice versa. Foremost among the living objects were great inky jellyfish monstrosities, which flabbily quivered in harmony with the vibrations from the machine. They were present in loathsome profusion, and I saw to my horror that they overlapped, that they were semi-fluid and capable of passing through one another, and through what we know as solids. These things were never still, but seemed ever floating about with some malignant purpose. Sometimes they appeared to devour one another, or attack the attacker launching itself at its victim, and instantaneously obliterating the latter from sight. Shudderingly, I felt that I knew what had obliterated the unfortunate servants, and could not exclude the things from my mind as I strove to observe the other properties of the newly visible world that lies unseen around us. But Tillinghast had been watching me and was speaking.
You see them? You see them. You see the things that float and flop about you. And through every moment of your life, you see the creatures that form what men call the pure air and the blue sky. I have not succeeded in breaking down the barrier. I have not shown you worlds that no other living men have seen.
I heard him just barely scream through the horrible chaos and looked at the wild face thrust so offensively close to mine. His eyes were pits of flame and they glared at me with what I now saw was overwhelming hatred. That the machine droned detestably. You think those floundering things wiped out the servants? Fool, they are harmless. But the servants are gone, aren't they? You tried to stop me. You discouraged me when I needed every drop of encouragement I could get. You were afraid of the cosmic truth, you damned coward. But now, I've got you. What swept up the servants? What made them scream so loud? Don't know, eh? You'll soon know enough. Look at me. Listen to what I say. Do you suppose there are really any such things as time and magnitude? Do you fancy there are things as form or matter? I tell you, I have struck depths that your little brain cannot picture. I have seen beyond the bounds of infinity and have drawn down demons from the stars. I have harnessed the shadows that stride from world to sow death and madness. Space belongs to me, do you hear? Things are hunting me now. The things that devour and dissolve, but I know how to elude them. It is you they will get. Just as they had got my servants. Stirring, dear sir? I told you it was dangerous to move. I have saved you so far by telling you to keep still. Saved you to see more sights and to listen to me. If you had moved, they would have been at you long ago. Don't worry, they won't hurt you. They didn't hurt the servants. It was seeing that made the poor devil scream so. My pets are not pretty, for they come out of places where aesthetic standards are very different. Disintegration is quite painless, I assure you, but I want you to see them. I almost saw them, but I knew how to stop. Are you not curious? I always knew you were no scientist. Trembling with anxiety to see the ultimate things I have discovered. Why don't you move then? Tired? Well, don't worry, my friend, for they are coming. Look! Look, curse you, look! Just over your left shoulder. What remains to be told is very brief, and may be familiar to you from the newspaper accounts. The police heard a shot in the old Tillinghast house and found us there. Tillinghast dead, and me unconscious. They arrested me because the revolver was in my hand, but released me in 3 hours. After it was apoplexy, which had finished Tillinghast, and saw that my shot had been directed at the noxious machine, which now lay hopelessly shattered on the laboratory floor. I did not tell very much of what I had seen, for fear the coroner would be skeptical. But from the evasive outline I did give, the doctor told me that I had undoubtedly been hypnotized by the vindictive and homicidal madman. I wish I could believe that, Doctor. It would help my shaky nerves if I could dismiss what I now have to think of the air and the sky about and above me. I never feel alone nor comfortable, and a hideous sense of pursuit sometimes comes chillingly on me when I am weary. What prevents me from believing the doctor is this one simple fact: that the police never found the bodies of those servants whom they say Crawford Tillinghast murdered. And that was From Beyond by H.P. Lovecraft. Oh boy, what a fucking trip that one is.
Old and classic.
Very classic. It's one of my favorites. I actually remember reading this in my creative writing class in high school. It was one of my favorites and still is.
Hell yeah. And his stories are always a good read for even the modern audience who need to know where like horror comes from. It's not as scary now because everything that basically Lovecraft wrote about was how technology was advancing and how he basically hated it. He held a very, very, very like minor view towards technology and everything else, like UV rays and stuff. And he, in his own mind and his own words, stated that if we start using like UV lights, etc., that something's going to waken and it's going to be pissed. Which didn't really happen.
I love the teetering on madness from Crawford Tillinghast, just like the like barely holding it together just long enough to make his point. I gotta sneeze.
Bless you.
Excuse me. Sorry about that, chat. Allergies are a hell of a thing. Fucking Lego Yoda scream. But anyways, that was our 2 stories for the Midnight Zone. Thank you so much again for joining us on this delve into the depths of the human psyche and what goes a bump in the night. Ooh.
Bump in the night and underneath your bed.
For next week, I will read Dagon by H.P. Lovecraft, and I will read some more short horror stories from r/short scary stories, so stay tuned for that. In the meantime, be sure to lock your doors and your windows, and don't forget to close your closet. Check under your bed for something that might be there. Good night, friends. Sleep well. Yippee! Yippee!
And also, just as a side note, the Midnight Zone will be moved to Thursday as the travel agency is going to be booting up again. So
Yes,
don't miss
so
out
stay tuned
on the
for that.
prequel episode of the travel agency where we'll be discussing how we're going to handle the new season.
Yes.
Once again.
Yippee! Yippee!
Anyways, let's see if anybody else is streaming at the moment, just quickly. Let's see, is there anybody out there? Please tell me Purple is doing something. Fuck.
I hope so.
Nope, they're not.
Shit.
Anyways, well, I guess we're ending it here. Have a good one, everybody, and a good night to all of y'all, and just stay safe. Bye.